Hi, I'm Jules, and I'm a mental health professional.
And I'm Mallory, and I have experience working in behavioral therapy.
And together, we are Bat Brains.
We are a paranormal and true crime podcast with mental health analysis.
Our goals are to spread awareness, crush stigma,
and give you goosebumps, the spooky kind.
Listen anywhere podcasts are available.
If you love us, rate, review, and subscribe.
But remember to be kind,
survive,
and call your therapist.
Around 4 in the morning on April 18th, 2016, 45-year-old fitness instructor Missy Bevers walked into Creekside Church in Midlothian to lead a workout. Overnight, surveillance cameras had captured someone dressed in police SWAT gear, but not believed to be a police officer, walking the halls. When Bevers' workout group arrived, they found her body.
Why haven't they been caught? Why don't we know 4.5 years later who it is? Hey everybody, you're listening to Creep It Real. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Bianca.
Thanks for listening to Creep It Real, the podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the family, officially Cody from Arizona. And thank you so much to everyone this week for the amazing reviews that we got on iTunes. It makes our whole week worthwhile. Seriously, super, super grateful for all of it.
Yeah, I hope y'all know, your reviews, your positive reviews are the only thing keeping us going day to day.
Truly.
Life has become that bleak.
If you would like to join our family, head on over to patreon.com/creepitrealpod, or you can head over to our website, creepitrealpod.com, and the link is there for you as well. And of course, if you, like we just said, if you want to make our whole weeks, go over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star written review. We do read all of them. And lastly, of course, share us with your family and your friends.
Even your acquaintances, you can share us with
yes,
those too.
Absolutely.
Strangers even.
Definitely strangers.
Anybody.
Would be just somebody on the street.
Share us with anyone. Today's case is much requested from my home state of Texas, and it is still unsolved, coming up on 5 years later, even though there is more video evidence of the person who committed the murder than you get in pretty much any case you've ever heard of. It is the mysterious murder of Missy Bevers.
There's very limited information about her mysterious murder, so our sources will be included in the show notes for you. So there you go.
Let us begin.
Missy was born Terry Leanne Strickland in Graham, Texas on August 9th of 1970. Missy was the middle child in her family, and although she was born Terry, she went as Missy for most of her life.
I was curious about that because I was like, where does Missy come in here? I guess it's a childhood name.
I think it's just a childhood nickname.
Okay. Hey, Missy.
In 1997, Missy was working, so we kind of just skipped her entire life and then headed right into 1997 here.
I mean, I don't know that her childhood really has a lot to do with what happens at this point.
Right. In 1997, Missy was working at a Beal's department store where she met the woman who would become her mother-in-law, Marcia Tucker. She described Missy as a down-to-earth country girl upon first meeting her and thought that she would be a great match for her oldest son, Brandon. She gave Missy Brandon's phone number and they started talking and set a date for lunch during one of Missy's work breaks.
In one of the only instances of a mother setting up her son that actually has worked out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, God. I'd be like, get out of my life, Mom.
Yeah,
Good
no
Lord.
kidding.
Your choices are horrible.
Also, most moms, when, for their sons, they're like, not good enough. Not good enough. So I also read that the day that they were having their lunch date, which is obviously a super informal kind of date, he had just been to a wedding and he showed up in a tuxedo, which for me, I would have not been too impressed, but I guess she found it endearing that he showed up to the informal lunch date in a full tuxedo.
Yeah, that's weird. A little strange.
Not for me, thank you. When Brandon met her, he was, of course, smitten with her, and although he was considering moving out of state, Missy was just as smitten with him and said she would follow him anywhere.
Well, that's nice.
9 months later, they got married, and after a honeymoon cruise to Alaska, she went back to school, got her certificate in special education, and began working as a teaching assistant for 2 years. After their first child was born in 2001, Missy decided to stay at home with her, and they had 2 more daughters. And as the 3 girls got older, she promised herself after each pregnancy that she would get back in shape. I think that's a common goal for moms after pregnancy.
That and just about everybody.
Right.
In the whole world,
Right.
I think.
When her youngest daughter reached 2nd grade, Missy took on fitness as her new career. Of course, in order to grow her new business as a fitness instructor, she did what most people do and posted frequently on social media about where her classes were and, of course, at what time.
For example, on April 14th of 2016, she posted to Facebook from a Camp Gladiator event that was going on in Austin. And on the 15th, she posted photos from that event. Brandon Bevers that day would also have a minor outpatient surgery at BUMC. And Missy that day would receive something on LinkedIn, a message on LinkedIn that would be circulated through pretty much every online story. I mean, I've seen this talked about a lot, is this creepy, quote unquote, creepy message on LinkedIn. And so she receives this creepy message on LinkedIn and it's seen by her friend who calls it creepy, says that Missy called it creepy. I have some speculation about this that we'll talk about in a little while. On the following day, she posts more pictures from that event in Austin where she was with a bunch of other Camp Gladiator trainers and they were having kind of like a, I don't know, Camp Gladiator summit or something of the sort. On the 17th, Brandon posted pictures of the North Texas weather radar referring to a flight he had at noon. I don't know if I should keep speculation about this stuff, I guess, till later, because I'm like, why are you always this forthcoming with every single little bit of information about traveling? And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that I want to say about this, and it's going to be very difficult to keep it's going to be like, okay, this is the fact, and this is my opinion, because there's like such little fact here, and there's a lot of really suspicious shit. I don't know if I should say I don't know if I should even say this right now. I don't know. Because it's like, him and his father both all of a sudden are like, look at all my goings-ons on Facebook, everyone. Look, I'm going to be here. I'm totally out of town.
Right.
Look at me. Here's my flight to Mississippi. And then like the minute he landed, he's like, after my 5-hour flight, my first stop is this crab shack. I'm just like.
I do have to say though, like on vacations, I've done that. Where if I'm on a vacation, I'm like, I just landed in Florida. I need to get a Starbucks. Like I I actually remember a specific thing I did on like Snapchat or Instagram where I did that. I think it's just like, okay, I don't know. I think that's kind of, to me, that's normal, but obviously leave the speculation. Yeah. Speculation will obviously come into play. It always does.
Yeah. Okay.
So Missy lived about 10 miles away from the Creekside Church of Christ in the town of Red Oak. And on the night of April 17th, 2016, she made several Facebook posts about her 5 a.m. Camp Gladiator boot camp class being moved indoors for the following morning. And it was important because typically she would hold her boot camp sessions outdoors, and due to what was going to be a very rainy morning, they had to do it indoors.
So she posted on Facebook, if it's raining, we're still training. No excuses. You are gladiators. And that was her last post. She then... Well, actually, it wasn't, because she then posted to Facebook at 9:23 that she was going to bed because she had to be up at 3:30 a.m., which I know that I mean, I know how it is on social media, but man, oh man, are you just like giving out now that we know what happened, you're just like giving out your perfect timeline from the morning, you know? And allegedly that evening at 9:30, Brandon says that they talked on the phone, told each other they loved each other, and went to bed around 9:30. So at 2 a.m., a light-colored 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima pulls into the SWFA parking lot, which was a gun shop about a half a mile down the highway from the Creekside Church. The car turned its lights off when it pulled into the parking lot, and then it would flick its lights off and on 3 times sit in the parking lot for about 2 minutes, and the police would later say the driver was not a suspect, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that's kind of like, please just come forward. Like, we'll talk about this. It's just one of there's a lot of coincidences in this case, and if they're just random coincidences, then I'll be a monkey's uncle. The Texas is coming out of me.
Say that's the most sexist thing you could have ever said. So the next morning on April 18th, 2016 at 3:50 in the morning, although the outdoor surveillance happened to not be working that day, CCTV surveillance footage captured an unknown individual between 5'2" and 5'7", so 5-inch difference. But then other speculation says between 5'8" and 5'9". It's
we'll kind of talk about it a little bit more here in a minute.
Yeah. Breaking into the Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas.
So what we know, per the law enforcement search warrants they have about 1 million search warrants, but they describe what they know as fact for them is that approximately at 5:06 a.m., Midlothian police received a call about an unresponsive person at Creekside Church of Christ. The caller advised them that it was a female subject, which was later ID'd as Missy Bevers, and she was at the church location, not breathing, and once they got there, realized she was not breathing and she was deceased, according to the caller. First responders on the scene noticed that there were several exterior and internal doors that had extensive damage to them, as well as broken glass throughout the inside of the church. They determined the subject entered at the north side at the kitchen, where the investigators found a busted metal door. At that side of the building, it's very dark at night, and in the early morning, there's not a lot of light on that side of the church. The suspect also busted the glass of the rear double doors on the east side of the building that is lit up a little bit more in the parking lot. After getting video surveillance recordings from the church, investigators saw a subject wearing a black helmet, black balaclava, dark pants, dark long-sleeve shirt, black gloves, elbow pads, knee pads, and a black vest with police in white lettering on the front and the back. The subject is seen walking throughout the building holding a hammer, they believe, breaking windows, and going through offices. The police refer to the tactical gear like it's something from a TV show. There's also a headlamp on the helmet, which can be subtly seen when coming out of a room when it illuminated a wall and a door on the inside. It's also named in a search warrant that there was a headlamp on the helmet. At approximately 4:18, Missy is observed entering the building through the main door under the awning area. It shows her walking toward the suspect's location. Neither the suspect or the victim are seen again on the video. The victim was later found deceased at the southwest corner of the interior of the building. Missy had multiple puncture wounds found on her head and chest, which were consistent with the tools the suspect was carrying throughout the building. The police would later file an order to seal the search warrant from being released to the public under the notion that if the information contained within the search warrant were publicly disclosed, it would cause the destruction of evidence. So, obviously, there's a lot of this video that we haven't been able to see due to them, I believe, just like we've seen many times, there's certain evidence that they want to keep close to the chest so that once they catch whoever it is, hopefully, that they will be able to identify them as the killer and not either someone falsely confessing or someone that someone that actually has knowledge that isn't publicly known. So let's discuss the video a little bit more in depth and what exactly happened that morning, at least what we gathered what happened from the little bits of video and then the first responders arriving.
So the unknown individual is seen on camera leisurely pacing the empty, dark halls of the church. As he or she is walking the hallways, the camera catches a glimpse of a hammer or possibly another type of mallet in their left hand, but the individual does not appear to spend any amount of time at a particular door or location of the church while opening doors. They're also checking locks, and occasionally they're breaking a random window, but in a very kind of ominously calm and comfortable manner. And I mean comfortable in an I'm familiar with my surroundings kind of manner.
Right.
Like they've been in the church before or worked at the church or knew the goings on at the church.
And like you mentioned, the camera on the outside of the church wasn't working, and it seems like that person knew that wasn't working.
Right.
And definitely seemed to not be
concerned,
like they were in there to do any sort of breaking theft type situation, breaking and entering and theft type situation. Like some people some people suggest that maybe she just interrupted a burglary, but it clearly, I believe, if you're going to burgle a place, you're not just going to be like, la-di-da, let me just randomly do some stuff.
Well, and then also they didn't steal anything off of her body either. They didn't take her ring. Her ring was still on her body when they found her. So I think if it was a burgle situation, they would have taken that too.
I don't know. In that situation, it's like also if it was an emergency, like if they weren't expecting someone to come in and interrupt them and he or she had to murder Missy in the middle of what they thought was going to only be a burglary, I don't know if they would think like, let me pull this ring off of her finger. But also, I'm also like, what are y'all, Jay-Z and Beyonce? Like, is this ring that big? I know the way that the value of rings go down. Is that even a big? I don't know. Do people really give a shit about wedding rings? Like, unless it's like just a really giant rock. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah,
because like
jewelry is a frequently stolen object.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I guess I'm like, I've sold a wedding ring before, and what I got for it was
same.
Piddly as fuck compared to what I spent. So it's like, I don't know. The person is wearing tactical gear, as we've talked about. And is this because it is a way to conceal their identity and protect them from leaving DNA or getting DNA on them, to prevent them from getting defensive wounds? Maybe was it a way for them to get Missy to initially trust them for like the split second that they needed to overtake her? Because that's something else that everybody wonders is, how did this person who seems to have issues walking in general, overtake somebody who is physically fit and should have been able to defend herself. But again, if she wasn't expecting somebody to be there, and then maybe, there's also the theory that they were breaking glass to either and causing some damage in the building to perhaps make her think that there was a break-in and there was a police officer there to respond to the scene, or was, just so that they get that split moment where she's like, oh, thank goodness. And then they hammer her in the head or whatever they did to her. Just to be able to overtake her. I don't know. It's just obviously speculation. The police say the police initially said that the person was about 6 foot tall, which is what they told Brandon initially. Then they told the public it was somebody that was between 5'7" and 5'9", and then changed it later to somebody who is 5'2" to 5'7". I don't know how they got that crazy difference of height, but I'm also like wondering, how do you not take the video and the door heights that you can verify and then come up with like a pretty good fucking idea? To me, the person does not seem anywhere near close to being as short as 5'2" or even 5'5". Like if you watch the video, they're only a few inches off of the height of the door, which is probably, it's between like, I think they say like 6'9" and 7 foot tall. And obviously the person's wearing a helmet, so that's going to add a little bit of height to them. But to me, it's like somebody between 5'7" and 5'9" sounds like the more accurate.
Realistic,
because otherwise you would be quite short compared to those doorways. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like, when do you ever have the ability to compare somebody to the doorway that you can actually measure, and then you still can't don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know. It's so strange. And like you said, the person is just kind of meandering around. It's almost like they knew they needed to get there early, and they knew what time Missy was going to arrive at the church, and they were just kind of biding their time because they, okay. Yeah. There's so much speculation, I guess. This person also seems to have some fairly significant kyphosis, meaning their upper back is pretty rounded. Their right foot is angled out quite a bit. On the video, you can see it. It's like they were walking with their right foot at like I don't even know what angle that would be. 45-degree angle. It's pointed outward quite a bit, and it seems to really be awkward. Like it would almost be like they're wearing boots that are too big for them, which doesn't make a lot of sense if you're trying to be quick and overtake somebody. Or they just walk kind of weird. Their arms are really swinging around, and we'll talk about it in a little while at the end, but there are some significantly eerie videos, in my opinion, of a certain person in Missy's life that looks exactly like this when they're walking around. So someone suggested that maybe this person was trying to learn how to walk, and like they just for the first time put steel-toed boots on and this person said, whenever I was learning how to walk in steel-toed boots when I got a job where I had to wear them, I felt like I was walking around like a baby deer. Maybe that's what was happening here, because there's definitely something about the way that the person in this church was walking around that doesn't look just totally normal. It's odd enough that you can look at the way this person walks and their gait and their mannerisms to be able to say, this could help us figure out who the heck this is. Right. It's not just like everybody else walking around.
So Missy Bevers arrived at that Creekside Church of Christ early that morning around 4:16 to begin setting up the room for her 5 a.m. boot camp class, completely unaware of the person that was already inside the church and also who was presumably already waiting for her. So she grabbed her workout equipment and headed through the main entrance. Like Ashley said, there are multiple entrances of the church, but she came in through the main one with the awning in the front. Also, it is believed that the murderer came in through a rear entrance where there was a broken window and a broken door latch. Although, of course, again, the cameras were not working. But in addition to the windows being broken and so forth, the rear of the church also butts up to a small patch of woods. Maybe they were waiting in the woods I don't know.
Yeah, and it's very dark over there.
Where they were coming from, and it's pitch black. I mean, it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
An autopsy of Missy revealed that she died from multiple puncture wounds to her head and her chest. The medical examiner was able to determine that the wounds on Missy's head and chest were consistent with the tool the suspect was carrying throughout the building. Shortly after Missy's murder, authorities released to the public several minutes of that surveillance footage we just talked about from the church. After Missy's brutal murder, they brought Brandon in for questioning and showed him the video of the person in the SWAT gear, and he said that his immediate first words out of his mouth response was, "That's not tactical gear," which it doesn't. It looks like LARPing. Like, it doesn't look like true tactical gear, in my opinion, either. There has, of course, been speculation that the person involved in the murder of Missy did have some sort of connection to law enforcement, but the gear that the person had was more vintage and probably worn with the intent to catch Missy off guard and to gain some sort of an advantage, like Ashley just said. Or another theory is possibly to mask the individual's gender.
I mean, it's definitely masking their identity altogether.
Their height, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, one of the first things that homicide investigators do after a murder is to look into the victim's personal life. And police discovered that Missy and Brandon were having marital and financial problems at the time of her murder. Although, in a 2019 interview, Brandon vehemently denies that was the case.
Well, okay. Interesting, considering he's the one that told police in the first place that she had an affair.
But several reports also indicate that Missy was possibly having several affairs outside of her marriage to Brandon.
He told them that.
Right.
So how in 2019 is he going to come back and deny it? So as we know, when a woman is murdered or goes missing, their partner is usually the number one suspect, and for good reason. According to a global study on homicide, of all the women globally who were the victims of homicide in 2017, more than 1/3 of those were killed by a partner from a current or past relationship, which is pretty significant when we're talking about national homicide of women. So, I guess y'all, I'm probably going to get some complaints about this episode because I'm definitely very suspicious of the inconsistencies and the consistencies that are being ignored, I guess, by certain members of Missy's family, in my opinion. So, in January of 2016, Missy started speaking with Casey Williams on LinkedIn. Per NBCDFW.com and a search warrant, these conversations turned flirtatious and familiar and continued up to her death, which doesn't necessarily mean that those two were having an affair necessarily. They could have just been having flirty conversations.
Right. So, like Ashley just said, the police and the public start suspecting that Missy's husband, Brandon, may have been involved in her brutal murder. And when police sit down and talk with Brandon a few days later after the killing, he does provide an airtight alibi, and it turns out that Brandon was over 600 miles away on a fishing trip the morning that Missy was killed. They even spoke to the captain who was in charge of the ship that they were going to be doing this fishing trip on, and they talked to the 12 guys that he was with as well.
Yeah, well, sorry to bust out with this one, but that is very typical when someone hires out a murder of somebody that they are involved with. Sure. Is they have an airtight alibi with 8,000 witnesses. Because if you just say, I was sitting in a hotel room by myself, it's kind of hard to verify. But if you're like, I was on a boat with 17 other people and they can all identify me as being there, it's just okay, fine.
24 hours after the murder, news stations camped out in front of the Bevers' home trying to talk to Brandon. His demeanor was what some would consider to be odd, and he said weird things like he was afraid of the case being solved, or that they, meaning the family, just wanted to move on.
The day of the murder.
And although I don't know if that's unusual, I don't know if I had a spouse brutally murdered. I don't know how I would react. I don't know what I would say or do. I'd know that I wouldn't say something like, I'm afraid of the case being solved. Yeah. That's suspicious.
It's definitely, I definitely give room for being in shock and not knowing how to handle a situation. So I'm not gonna, I don't always look at people's behavior as a complete giveaway of their involvement in a crime. But to say the day after the murder that you're afraid it's going to be solved or that you just want to move on, I never, ever hear that from a victim's family.
Right.
Even 15 years later,
right,
you don't hear. I just don't care about solving this.
Right.
Okay.
Brandon actually also had somebody from the investigative team come live with him as well, so he could show that he had nothing to hide, which, I mean, I guess it could kind of be like, why are you so willing to have somebody there with you to show that you have nothing to hide? But what if he just really wanted to clear his name? I don't know his motives. I don't know any of that.
And I don't really know what that proves if the crime has already taken place.
Right. Weirdly, 4 days after the murder, police received a report that a shirt was taken to a dry cleaner in Midlothian that looked like it had some blood on it. But it did look like the person had tried to get the blood out prior to dropping it off. It happened to be Brandon's father, Missy's father-in-law, who dropped off the shirt.
Oh.
Clearly, this was going to cause even further of a stir, and Randy explained to investigators that it was dog blood, and that their 13-year-old Chihuahua had gotten into a fight, and the dog did die. And they had DNA analysis confirm that as well. So I don't know if that. I have my own theories about the dad too.
Well, yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. We'll get into it later.
The police then tell the public that none of Missy's family members, including Brandon, are considered suspects or persons of interest in the case. Although they do think that she had been in contact with the killer, who may have also used a cell phone to record the murder. Like Ashley said earlier, Missy had received that creepy message on LinkedIn just days before her death, indicating that her murder might have also possibly been targeted.
Also, let me go back just a second to the family being cleared or not being considered suspects or persons of interest. It's like the police all along, whenever they do say things like this, they say at this time.
Right.
They never say they're cleared as suspects. They say at this time we are not looking at them as persons of interest.
That's true, yeah.
And then in regard to the creepy message on LinkedIn, the theory that I kind of had been throwing around about this is that Missy didn't, even though it seemed as though she might be having some relations outside of the marriage that her husband even knew about, it didn't seem like she had a lot of password protection and stuff on her phone. Like the police were able to get into her phone that day. So it didn't seem like she had it on lockdown necessarily. And if she was at maybe like this Camp Gladiator event and she had her phone sitting there and one of her friends there happened to see that message pop up and she was like, whoa, what is that? Because she sees that she gets this message from somebody that maybe have a little bit of sexual overtones or a little flirtatious or something. And the friend knows she's married. Missy knows she's married. So she's like, oh, it's just some creep, or just blows it off as, oh, it's just some creepy guy it seems like he's just who I don't even know who that is. We have no idea. It's just one of those things where we have no idea. And, all we have is her friend saying that she got a creepy message on LinkedIn, but it could have just been Missy trying to cover her butt. It could have been a creepy message too, but it may very well not have been.
So like Ashley said, the police became aware of a nearby business, the SWFA, about a half a mile from the church that does have surveillance footage of the area around the church. And after hours and hours of watching the footage, a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima was seen driving very slowly around the nearby closed businesses. The footage, as we mentioned before, shows the driver turning their headlights on and off several times as they circled the parking lot. At one point, the driver and the vehicle park for a short time under a parking lot light.
So was this perhaps the killer themselves, or was it a getaway driver? Was it a lookout? Because we do know that the surveillance footage at the church, which is motion activated, was activated at 2:23, I believe, or 2:26 a.m. that morning, but it didn't show anybody on the footage or anything that would have activated the cameras. So is it possible that the killer perhaps went and opened a door or broke a window perhaps somewhere at the church, and then either this car sat at this SWFA parking lot to see if any police responded, or the killer themselves got in that car and drove over to that parking lot and waited to see if there was any police response from the door being broken? Because we know also that the church did not have a security alarm, so they could have very well broke into that church earlier in the night and then waited to see if anybody responded to the break-in, which obviously didn't happen. And so then they were able to go back over there and know that they could get inside the church again to kill Missy without having any police or anybody be coming and interrupting them in the middle of the act.
The crime scene was only cordoned off for 7 hours, and Midlothian, not really having the resources to deal with this type of investigation, reached out to neighboring counties who had better resources. So Midlothian, Ellis, and Tarrant County investigators, the Texas Rangers, the FBI, and a K-9 unit from the ATF were a part of the investigation, and the crime scene was then analyzed by medical examiners, a trace evidence specialist, a forensic podiatrist I didn't even know existed, and a physiologist who all studied the crime scene.
On May 11th, Nancy Grace reported that Missy stopped showing up to the gym where she worked out about 2 weeks before her murder, and that the police were honing in on a disposable phone that was used by the suspect. Which are two things that I had not heard before, but I also know that Nancy Grace is full of shit, so it's not really verifiable.
Sure.
She says a lot of stuff that isn't true. On May 13th, Tarrant County DA, the Tarrant County DA's office completed reconstruction of video evidence, which gave them a detailed description of the suspect, though no details were released to the public of that suspect, which is interesting. I know that they have to keep information close to the vest or close to the chest. How do you say it?
Close to the... Well, I think either.
Okay. And so I understand the reasons for that, but I also know that if we are, as a public, are asked to help them, which they have requested the public to watch these videos and help in trying to identify the perpetrator based off of his gait and whatnot, then this is like slim ass pickings to be going off of. They really have released hardly anything. And on that same day, the SWFA Outdoors offered an additional $10,000 reward for info leading to an indictment of who killed Missy, bringing the total to $20,000. On May 20th, the MPD held a press conference where they discussed some of the facts of the case. This is where they said the suspect's height was between 5'2" and 5'7". There was no confirmed gender, even though they initially had started off by referencing this person as a male. They started to say they could not be sure if it was male or female. They announced that they were looking for the Nissan Altima that pulled into the SWFA parking lot at approximately 2 a.m. They also said that Brandon and Randy had solid alibis and were not the current focus of the investigation. None of Missy's friends, families, or coworkers were suspects, according to the police at that time. Again, that was the key word there at this time. On May 24th, Brandon is interviewed on Fox 4. He says he can forgive the killer if they come forward, and he has seen more video than the public has, and he's 75% sure that it was a woman on the tape. Mm-hmm. Then the next day, his interview with People magazine is published, and in this interview, he says he thinks the killer is a woman and mentions that the killer did not take her wedding ring, as Bianca mentioned. So in the search warrants, and there are numerous search warrants, there's some for the Facebook accounts. There's some for LinkedIn. There's phone warrants, just evidentiary search warrants. The persons of interest on these search warrants, there's about 9 of them. It's Casey Williams, who is the person that she had a flirtatious relationship with on LinkedIn. He is married with kids and is a former member of the military. So Missy is also named in the search warrants, obviously. Her husband, Brandon, Randy, his father, Courtney Tucker is named, and he is the wife, or she was the wife of a fellow trainer who was also named in the search warrants, named AJ Tucker. He was a fellow Camp Gladiator trainer. He was at that Camp Gladiator event in Austin with Missy days before her murder. He said on Facebook that trash was seized in the middle of the night from his trash can. He thought it was strangers, but it was actually law enforcement that came and confiscated some of the trash in their trash can. So clearly AJ was not the person in the video. As we can see on the video, that small portion of their face that's showing, you can see their eyes and their skin very clearly. AJ is a black person, so it's clearly not him on that video. His wife is white, so there are people online that speculate that it could be her, but he was conducting a class at the same time a few miles away at 5 a.m. He was definitely not the person there, and it's a kind of a stretch probably to be saying his wife has anything to do with it also. I think they just had been close to each other in the time, the days before her murder, and they kind of were like work associates, so they talked to each other online and stuff. There was also Kevin Cozine and Michelle Cozine. These are parents of one of the good friends of one of the Bevers' children, and Kevin is who Brandon told police right away that Missy was having an affair with at the time. Since then, Kevin and Michelle have divorced. It's also, I have to say, so Brandon is the only person who said that Missy was having an affair with this Kevin Cozine, who he came up front and told the police about. We don't know if this is actually true. This is obviously just another one of those things where this is what Brandon has told police. It could be, or could not be true. We really don't know. But he did come out to the police and said that she was having an affair with this Kevin Cozine. The other person on the search warrants is V. Bevers, which is Randy's wife. And then the last person is Wendy Houts, which is a friend of Brandon's and the Bevers family. These people were cleared as suspects, quote, as of this time. Again, it was very specific. As of this time, they are not suspects. Not forever and ever, but just at that time. The wording is very deliberate with the police anytime suspects are talked about with this case, that's for sure. There's also in the search warrants a mention of a gun serial number, and while we don't really know what this gun is that they're talking about, I think that part of that is probably because they're withholding that information as it's sensitive, though it very well could be the firearm that Missy allegedly had in her truck, but she did not take with her into the church that morning. Detective Kevin Johnson has referenced critical evidence found at the scene that they are withholding from the public, which is thought to be a weapon or a tool found at the scene that may or may not have been used in the murder. And so again, like there was definitely some implements that were found at the scene that haven't been reported to the public.
Bobby Wayne Henry was someone that forensic podiatrist Michael Nuremberg could not rule out either. Nuremberg was asked to study the gaits of many local people in order to determine what kind of walk the murderer had from the video evidence.
And I think they took this at her funeral. So this Bobby Wayne Henry actually came to her funeral.
So,
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So he was described as an interesting character and had experience as a police officer and a tactical officer as well. He even admitted that he owned the same gear and said that he also had the same gait as the suspect in the video. Bobby Wayne Henry attended the same church as Missy and family and volunteered at her memorial service. The morning of the murder, he was at home, and according to him, he got up at 3 to feed his baby while his wife got up for work. Coincidentally, a dark SUV was observed leaving the church at 4:30 the morning of the murder, and he also owned a dark Honda CR-V.
And I gotta say, if there was a dark SUV observed leaving the church at 4:30 in the morning, that was the person that killed Missy, period.
Sure, yeah.
Like, that's unequivocally, that is it right there. Because she was already dead by that point.
Right.
So, yeah.
On December 14th of 2016, there was a search warrant executed for his vehicle and his home, and he was arrested, but it was for unrelated reasons.
He was arrested for child pornography, and he actually, I guess they found it on a computer that he shared with other people. So in the end, he was released without any conviction, because they weren't able to prove that it was actually his child pornography. But he definitely does walk similarly to the person in the video, but so does someone else that we will talk about in a second.
However, as of 2019, Midlothian is not looking into Bobby Wayne Henry any longer either. Of course, there's additional information, like we've said time and time again, that police are keeping close to their chests in the event that they are able to interrogate a suspect. The examiner also knows what weapon was used, presumably a hammer or a mallet, but they are choosing to keep that to themselves as well in order to assist them with the case. To this day, the person seen in the church's surveillance video or the driver of the Nissan Altima have never been identified. There have been no arrests made in the murder of Missy Bevers. There are several possible theories about Missy's killer, including Brandon Bevers and his father, Randy Bevers. Some people also speculate the killer is someone Missy was romantically involved with at the time of the murder. In contrast, other people think that it could be the significant other of someone who was having an affair with Missy.
All are very possible theories. In December of 2017, Brandon said that he could no longer focus on trying to find the killer of Missy, that he was trying to take care of his daughters, and his daughters were similarly not interested in finding the killer, which is something that I really have to call BS on. First of all, let me go forward and then I will continue on there. Although he says this, that they're not interested in finding the killer of Missy, one of he and Missy's daughters, Allison, recently won a $15,000 or was awarded, I guess, $15,000 at a high school livestock show. She sold a pig and it was bought by a local women's group who gave her $15,000. And Allison said that she was going to donate the money to the investigation into her mother's murder, which completely contradicts that her father is out saying that they're not interested in finding the killer of her murder. Right. If she's willing to give all of the $15,000 to the police to help them in finding the killer. But the MPD considered taking that money from her and then later declined to take it from her, saying that and their investigation was already funded. There are reports that Brandon had called them and told them that not to take the money, which I'm not even sure if that's true, but that's just what is reported, allegedly. Like I said, I think it's very suspicious that the husband of a murdered woman, no matter what their relationship was like before she was murdered, would be uninterested in finding the killer of the murder of his children's mother. Right.
Yes.
Never in my life have I heard that before until now. I find that to be very suspicious. I also want to bring up the fucking father-in-law who, if we show you, I'm gonna post some of these videos. So there's videos of him walking in the days following Missy's murder, where they talk to the news media. And again, I understand that everybody's going to react differently. It's going to be probably a weird experience for you to be on the news, being interviewed by people when you're not used to it, and you may act in a way that others might see as being a little bit suspicious. Like Randy Bevers is like laughing and smiling a lot, making jokes. He also swings his arms exactly like the person in that video that's walking around the church. He also has a right foot that angles out exactly like the person in that video. And he also has that kyphotic back issue that I talked about at the beginning when we were talking about the video, where his upper back is extremely rounded. So it's very suspicious to me about his goings-ons. I know that they said he has a solid alibi because he went to California and checked in somewhere whenever he got there on his phone through Facebook, which you can do from anywhere at all. People check in places they're not all the time, so it's really not a solid alibi. I know they say that maybe some people saw him there, and that's possible, but he looks exactly like the person in that video, in my opinion, and according to many other people. So this is like very speculative, and it was just from a comment on YouTube, but I wanted to read it because it seems awfully suspicious. So this person on YouTube, in a video comparing the walks of the person who killed Missy in the church and of Randy Bevers, left this comment. She said, Randy was my husband's boss from August 2013 to October or November of 2015, and we and everyone who works with my husband think he is the one in the video. He walks 100% the same and is the same height and weight. From talking to everyone else who knows him, the majority say he is 100% capable of doing this and probably did. He was always threatening his employees and had just been forced to resign due to embezzlement. The company didn't have 100% proof, so they basically said, resign, forfeit your retirement, and we won't open a full investigation. So I'm thinking Missy knew and had proof of what he was doing and told him she was going to tell. He left his job so fast. His wife, Vicky, was his secretary, and they lived in a mobile home on the job site. He left all the paperwork, files, etc. They left hundreds of employees' paperwork with their social security numbers, date of birth, address, etc. So my husband grabbed them and we burned them. They also left their bank statements, which I saved just in case they ever wanted to open the embezzlement case. The statements are pretty incriminating, so I can only imagine what Missy knew. I'm sure Randy told his son and he told his wife, and it blew up from there. I could be wrong, but with this information law enforcement is saying and the information I know and have, I'd say Randy was definitely more than capable and most likely did it. Obviously, that's complete speculation, and that can just be some rando person that has nothing to do with any of this. But it could also just be some insight into the situation in a way that we don't have because there's not a lot of information. Something that I was thinking, though, while I was researching and watching these videos and stuff is, why was Missy arriving so early to the church? I know it was raining, so they were going to have to be inside versus the typical outside setup, but what did she really have to set up? From my experience, group classes, because I've been a coach, but I'm not a Camp Gladiator coach, but from my experience, group classes like that are taking place anywhere but inside of a gym are going to have very limited equipment because it's unreasonable to be carrying in just like a shit ton of stuff. And I've been under the impression that Camp Gladiator was body weight or that you brought your own dumbbells with you to work out. I think that maybe Missy had a few things, like you were saying, like she carried inside with her into the church, but if she was just making one trip into the church, it obviously wasn't that much stuff. So why did she need to show up over 49 minutes early to the church? Like, it almost started making me think, was she supposed to be meeting someone there or something? Like, what exactly made her go to the church so early? I don't know why that would be the case. Obviously, like, there's no answer to that. Right. But I know that whenever I worked at a gym and I had to be there, like, I had a class at 5 a.m. and I would sometimes, and I had to set up some stuff for sure. It was inside of a gym, but I still had to set up. And I would get there early, but like 10 minutes early is about as early, 15 minutes early is about as early as you need to get it there. Sure. Why are you going to get there 45 minutes early? I mean, unless maybe she was going to work out beforehand or something herself. Or
stretch or whatever,
it almost made me start to wonder, had she been... But I guess they would have found that in her phone. But again, maybe they have and we just don't know. Right. But was she supposed to be meeting somebody there? Did somebody tell her? I don't know. I was almost like, could she be having an affair at 4 a.m. before her class? Like, I just don't know. I've known a coach or two to sleep with their clients at very odd hours. Sure. So, I don't know. I mean, it definitely, like, I just hadn't ever really heard anybody talk about that too much, about why was she getting there so early, and does that tell you anything about what was going on that morning? I don't know. I really don't know. But obviously, this case is unsolved and police are still searching for her killer.
So if you do have any tips or any information regarding Missy Bevers' murder, please contact the tip line at 972-775-7624. You can also provide information about the case by texting MIDL to 847-411. Of course, all tips regarding Missy's death are also kept confidential.
Surely somebody out there knows something. Like I always say, somebody's talked to somebody. Yes. Somebody that's done it knows something. Yes. Like 100%. There's somebody getting drunk and saying, fucking murdered that girl. Who knows? But I'm looking at you, Randy Bevers.
I did want to say, though, I did watch an interview. This doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't do it. Doesn't necessarily mean that he did do it. But I have a complex where I'm like, well, look at this side.
Yeah.
Like I have like the devil's advocate complex or whatever. Where I guess Randy's spine is actually like fused together, so he couldn't like look up. And in the video, the suspect looks up at that door that opens in two separate spots. But that could also, also I'm like looking back in my head and I'm like, well, that could be Brandon like just looking for a reason why it couldn't be his dad. So I don't know, but none of us, we don't know.
It's unreal to that there's that much video evidence of a person and it somehow doesn't do a lick of good.
It's crazy.
It's definitely a very frustrating case.
Sure, yeah.
And
it's kind of like Elisa Lam though. Like there was so much evidence and video
That's
of
true.
her.
Yeah.
And we have no fucking clue what the fuck happened to Elisa Lam.
Yeah. I definitely know that as I'm reading and watching this video, it definitely creeped me the fuck out though.
Yeah, same.
Just thinking about somebody laying in wait, pretty much just waiting for you as you are completely unaware that they're there.
Right.
And like they said in the search warrants, like once she entered the church, she walked toward the area in which that person was. And just reading that alone, I'm like, I get goosebumps because it is so creepy to think about. And man, oh man, do I wish that she would have taken her gun into the church with her.
And and that you said that makes me also think, shit, what if it truly was targeted? Like, what if it was a truly targeted case and it, like, because they knew where she was going. They knew, like, where she was going to be headed to. So, like, I don't know.
I think it was 100% targeted.
Yeah.
Whether they paid, whether somebody paid somebody to kill her or whether someone killed her on their own accord. It's way, way too coincidental that they would have known that much. Cause also you have to think about that. There's a very short amount of time between when she gets there, or you would think, between when she gets there and when her first Camp Gladiator client gets there. Mm-hmm. And that person, obviously before she got there was lazily walking around. Obviously once she was murdered, they probably got the fuck out real quick.
Right.
But like they had to be confident that they weren't going to be walked in on. And so in my opinion, you've got to have a pretty good idea about her schedule and like when. That's why I'm so like dubious now. I'm like, why was she there that early?
Right.
Because now I'm like, maybe either she just does that always and that person knew it and that person was comfortable getting around that church, because that's another thing. They had to have been somewhat comfortable with that church. That was not the first time they'd ever been there.
No.
Because there's no way that they wouldn't be at least a little bit discombobulated if they
or like walking more slowly, like around the corner, or like
they knew. And like and I think that the car that was in the parking lot of the gun shop, I feel like that is related. What's the coincidence? It's too much of a coincidence to say that like 2 hours before of this unprecedented murder inside of a church that there is this odd car going into the parking lot, which the owner of that gun shop said is not normal for that to happen in their video surveillance.
Not only that, this isn't Austin. This isn't Houston, Austin. Like, this isn't a big city. This is a small town. This is Midlothian, Texas. Like,
it's a small town, but you still have to like also consider it's on a pretty major highway in the metroplex of Dallas, Fort Worth, which is, there's a lot of like smallish towns on the outskirts, obviously, of a huge city.
Sure.
And that is like kind of major thoroughfare. So it is possible. Cause like I think about it, I'm like, man, that person still lives there. I bet you. And I bet you that person lived there to begin with. Yeah. Or they live in a surrounding city where it's very easy to get there from 287. Sure. And maybe they've, it's just like, who knows? Is it a former client who went to her class and got to know her schedule and got to know the church, because I'm sure that wasn't the first day it rained, Who knows? Or is it somebody she had an affair with and they wanted to kill her? Was it their wife, like you said? Was it her own family because they were having financial issues, and who knows what she was doing and saying and what they were saying and doing.
Right.
It's really like we don't know anything. So, I mean, there's so many, we could probably sit here and theorize about
for hours.
What could have happened, forever. And I'm sure after we're done recording, I'm going to think about something that I wish I would have said, but it's just inevitable because there's so many random little, but yeah, it's definitely very similar to Elisa Lam in that sense, where it's like all this video, all this creepy ass footage, stuff that is like hinky, but you can't really pinpoint why it is. It's very frustrating, and I really hope that something comes about of solving this murder. I mean, I feel like the police probably have an idea. They have to have an idea, but like we've seen before, they don't want to blow their load.
Of course, yeah.
They want to be sure that when they make an arrest, that they're going to be able to convict this person, and they're not going to just get away with it after being arrested. So surely they're just waiting for like one little link to come through. But
I swear every case that we do that's like unsolved, I'm confident that you and I are going to solve it.
Yeah, it's going to be us for sure. Hey, all we need is to be able to do this as a full-time job, and we're going to be better than any old police force out there.
I swear to God. Delphi, Jody Huisentruit, I'm
all
like, we got this. This is the one that we solve.
Just let us do it full-time, and we'll be able there. So if in that case, if you want to help us become full-time podcasters, head over to creepitrealpod.com, and you can find links to our Patreon. You can email us. You can do anything you want there. Or also, you can share us with your friends and family.
And leave us 5-star written reviews on iTunes, and also share us with your strangers.
Yes, share us with all your strangers. Share us with all your strangers and weirdos, grapers, and okay. We love you. Have a great life.
Have a great everything.
Creep it real.